Hey Meeple people, how's it going? On today's vlog, we are looking at The Spill from Smirk and Laughter and Smirk and Dagger games. We will also want to thank Kurt Covert for providing this copy to us. Alright, let's get into it. Hey Meeple people, how's it going? Today we are playing The Spill. This is from Smirk and Dagger and Smirk and Laughter games. It is for 1 to 4 players, takes about 50 minutes to play, and it is for ages 10 and up. So we're going to go over to Sarah, and she's going to explain, give us a little summary about the game. So
Hi, everybody.
Without further ado, would you, Sarah?
Sure. So The Spill is a cooperative game for 1 to 4 players in which an oil rig has started spewing oil into the ocean. And it is our objective to contain the spill, clean up the oil, save animals, and that's what we're going to try to do. So in each game, we have unique win conditions, which are designated by cards that you draw at the beginning of the game. So our win conditions for the game are right over here, and they say things like we have to save animals, we have to remove oil from the oceans, and things like that. So the way that it works is, like I said, the game is for 1 to 4 players. No matter how many people are playing, we are going to play with 4 of these team members. So I have the requisition officer and the meteorologist, and it looks like Nick has the risk engineer and the environmental tech. So because it's a 2-player game for us, we are each going to control 2 of these characters, and we'll take a turn with one and then a turn with the other, and we'll play as if there were 4 people playing, but we'll just sort of double hand these. So what's going to happen is on a player's turn, we'll drop oil into the well here, and the oil comes in the form of these dice, which we'll draw out of this bag here, and then actually drop into this well. The well is a dice tower, which is going to distribute the dice randomly into these 4 quadrants. And then from each quadrant, we will assign the dice to a sector based on its value. So for example, in the setup of the game, we determined that this die here was dropped into this quadrant in sector 6. So this is where this die goes. So now there's oil that's starting to leak into the ocean over here from the oil rig that's leaking oil. And if we don't contain it in time or rescue this animal in time, eventually this animal will become contaminated by the oil and may end up in sickbay if we don't do anything about it. But there's a lot of ways for players to kind of try to mitigate the situation. We have a lot of different resources at our hand, including each of us has a unique player power. We also have these resources, which come in the form of cards that you sort of have to power up with these cubes here, and you earn these cubes by doing various things throughout the game, like rescuing a full set of animals or removing 3 of the oil dice from the board. Every time you do either one of those things, you'll earn a cube here that you place on one of these cards here, and when a card is fully sort of charged up, then it can be used at any point after that in the game. And these are all helpful to us in some way or another, and if we use them at the right time, they could really be immensely helpful to us. So the way that the game works is what we're going to do is we are going to take turns, each doing one character at a time. So I'll take a turn with this character, and then Nick will take a turn with one of his characters, and then I'll take a turn with one of mine, and so forth until all the characters have had turns. And we'll just keep doing that over and over and over again until the end of the game. The end of the game is going to happen when either we meet all of our win conditions and have no losing conditions present anywhere in the game, or if we have a losing condition present in the game at a particular point where we look for a losing condition, and if we have a losing condition at that point, then we lose the game. So fully cooperative, we're going to either win or lose all together as a team. No hidden roles or traitor mechanic or anything like that. So what's going to happen is on a player's turn, they are going to run through a phase where we actually sort of increase the oil that flows out of the rig. So we'll drop dice into the oil rig and assign them to their various areas of the board. And then each player has 4 action points that they can spend on their turn to do various actions. And those could be to rescue animals, to remove oil that has spilled out onto the board completely from the game and put it on the removed oil section or to push it back. And that means it just goes back in the bag. We can also rescue animals, but sometimes if animals are contaminated, for example, if this was a 5 and then we rolled another 5, this stingray right here, he would become contaminated, and that's shown by him being flipped over. Now he is contaminated by the oil. We can still rescue him, and if we do rescue him, then he'll still go to the rescued animal space over here. But if we don't rescue him in time, he may end up in sickbay. And this is one of the ways that we could lose the game. If you have 3 or more of the same animal type in sickbay, or if you have, but I don't remember, it's like a full, a full set of all 6 animals in sickbay, then that is another way that you can lose the game. So you take your turn, you spend your 4 action points to rescue animals or push the oil back or fully remove the oil from the game. Or to move around the board. And once you have spent all 4 of your action points, then it's the next character's turn, and they'll do the same thing. They'll drop some more oil dice into the oil rig here, and then they'll take their 4 action points and try to save marine life and push the oil back and get this mess cleaned up. So that's what we're going to do. There's a few other things I didn't talk about. One of them is that in this bag of oil dice, there are 3 weather die as well, and those are these blue dice right here. And so these dice might come out over the course of the game, and they kind of change what's happening that round. These work in conjunction with these little tokens on your board. So if a particular thing happens because of the weather, then all the players will flip over that token on their player mats, and then when that player has their turn, they'll work under those conditions based on the weather that we're having, and then they'll flip that token back over so that every character has a turn to work under those conditions. And then once all of those tokens are flipped back over, we know that every character has worked under those conditions, and we can move on from that. But there's 3 of these dice in here in this bag, and they'll kind of randomly come out and be dropped into the oil rig as well. And then, like I said, those weather conditions will affect how we play sort of that round of the game. Players can also get additional actions on their turn. So you always have 4 action points that you can spend on your turn, but you can get additional action points by drawing extra dice out of the bag, extra oil dice out of the bag. But then on the next drop, when we would have to drop oil into the rig, we have to add those extra ones. So there is ways for us to get a little bit more wiggle room if we feel like we need it, but it might be costly if we know that we're already going to be dropping a lot of oil into the ocean. So yeah, that's kind of a quick overview of the spill. Should we give it a try?
Yes, let's go ahead and jump into The Spill by Smirk and Dagger and Smirk and Laughter Games. All right, we'll be back midway through the game to talk about our experience. We will see you guys in a sec. Toodles! All right, Meeple people, we are back at the midpoint of playing The Spill, and we got 2 out of our 3 objectives done, so probably a little more than halfway done, but it has been an oily experience. So yeah, it's a doozy, but yeah, it's interesting so far. Sarah, what do you think so far in our mid game?
Yeah, so in this game, we are our specific objectives are that we have to rescue 2 full sets of animals, which we have successfully done now. We also had to choose 2 species of animals at the beginning of the game, and we had to rescue 5 of the 6 of those types of animals. So we chose turtles and seahorses, and we have rescued 5 of each of those. So we've met that objective as well. The third and final objective that we have to meet is to remove 12 oil from the board completely over to this section here. And we've only done 3 of those. So we still have 9 oil die that we need to remove from the board to the removed oil section over here. And that is a very costly action because each player only gets 4 AP on their turn, and it takes 3 to remove oil in that way. So it is costly, but because we have such a good handle on the rest of our game, I think that we're going to be okay. We also don't have too much going on, like too much bad stuff going on yet. We did have 1 spill out, so this means there were a 3rd die had to be placed in this sector right here, and that caused a spill out. So now, while this is happening like this, any die that would normally go in this sector, they can't fit anymore. So now they'll have to go on a sector on either side. Normally they have to go clockwise. So if we rolled another 4 right now, it'd have to go here, and that would cause another spill out, and it could potentially just keep going. But we have a specialist in play that says that we can choose which direction to send the spill out. And because this sector over here is open, we could send stuff this way if we needed to. So I'm not terribly concerned about this spill out right here. It's not great to get spill outs. If you get 6, and you are at the point of the game where you need to check for losing conditions, if you still have 6, then you lose. So that is one of the ways that you can lose, but we only have 1 right now. Spillouts also cause you to up your marker on this track right here. So we're playing a standard game. We started out with the marker on 3. Every time you have a spill out, you have to move this marker up. And it doesn't do anything right away, but eventually it will make it so that you have to drop even more oil dice at the beginning of each character's turn. So spill outs aren't great, but like I said, because we have that character that lets us sort of direct how the spill out goes, and because we have some free space over here, I'm not too terribly concerned about this spill out right here. We do have a lot of oil dice on the board right now, which could potentially lead to like a lot more spill outs, and I feel like that could escalate quickly. But because our sole objective left that we're concerned about is removing oil, I think we're just going to kind of scoot around the map and remove oil on our next several turns. And hopefully that will help to kind of get some of this oil off the board and help us towards our win condition as well.
Agreed.
So I think it's going well. We also have 1 fully charged resource card, and it was an expensive one. We chose, once you start working on a particular objective, you have to keep working on that side of the objective. So there's like most of the objectives have like more than one side, so you could do the top side or the bottom side of that one. And once you start working on a particular side, you have to keep working on that one. So we started working on the bottom, we couldn't switch to the top, but you don't have to keep working on the same resource card. So we put all 3 of ours there, but what we could have done is like start working on that one and then maybe like put 2 resources over here and completed this one first. But we really wanted to be able to do that particular thing, so we charged that one up fully. Now any more resource resource cubes that we accumulate, they can go onto any of our fresh cards, and then we have a pretty powerful ability available to us because that one is fully charged. So I feel like we're walking into the next round in a pretty good place. We do have to roll 1 extra action die, so that's going to be dropped into the oil well with the die that we have to pull out for the next character as well. And we do that because on any player's turn, if you want an extra action point or even 2 extra action points, you can sort of set aside oil dice over there in the extra action pool to get extra AP on your turn, but then you have to drop those oil dice into the rig on the next player's turn. So we decided that it was worth it for Nick to be able to get the extra action point because it meant that he could do a few different things that which were really helpful to us on his turn. So we said, yeah, it's probably worth having to add extra oil next turn. Hopefully that won't come back to bite us. I guess hopefully. We'll see. But yeah, I think we're in a good spot. What do you think, Nick?
I also think we're in a good spot. This is a pretty well-balanced game. I'll get more to that when we have our final discussion, final talk on the spill. But I'm liking it so far. I think we got a handle on it. As long as oil doesn't start geysering out of this sucker, we're trying to patch everything up and clean it up now, so I think we're in the home stretch, and I like the characters I have. They have nice abilities. Sarah's got some nice ones. There was a weather dye that came out that she wasn't affected by, so that kind of helped us in the game. And we
also,
able
with my
to,
requisition officer, we also get 5 resource cards, where normally you only get 4.
Yeah.
So.
And my risk manager, risk engineer, has been helping us getting less oil out and being able to maneuver spillouts into either direction instead of it being usually one direction. But I'm liking it a lot, and I think I'm confident that we will be able to beat this. But there are 3 modes that you can kind of start yourself on. We are on the standard.
There's also, for the win condition cards, there's also 3 sort of like tiers of win condition cards. There's like easier win conditions, medium, and sort of hard. And we picked the medium, so we have a medium difficulty win condition on the standard mode of play. So if you like wanted to just, 0 to 100, you could do like the ultimate mode of play with like one of the toughest win condition cards and
smash yourself.
Make it real hard if you wanted to.
If you want. All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump back into the spill and hopefully walk out with a win. And we will get back to you guys at the end of this video with our thoughts on the spill and what to expect from it and what we liked, what we didn't like, and all that good stuff. So, see you in a sec. Toodles! And welcome back, Meeple people. We have won. We won the spill. We contained the rest, I guess, of the oil, and it's cleaned up. Yep, cleaning up. Yep. So yeah, we won the game. Pretty cool. And we met all our conditions and removed some oil, saved a lot of animals. And yeah. So Sarah, what do you think of this game?
I think that it is a really decent cooperative game. If you like fully cooperative games, then I think that you should try this one. It really puts me in the mind of Flashpoint Fire Rescue, but a lot more approachable. There's a lot of, it feels like they kind of took a lot of the mechanics of Flashpoint Fire Rescue and streamlined them and cleaned up some of the like bookkeeping and the maintenance that you had to do and stuff like that. Now, a completely different publisher, completely different design team, not even the same thing, but it just feels like this is a very smooth, very approachable sort of version of Flashpoint. Different theme, different publishers, blah, 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 but that's the way that it seems to me.
Agreed.
I think that it's a great introductory cooperative experience for people who are looking for a hobby game sort of co-op experience, because the rulebook is pretty simple. I wish there was a little bit more in the rulebook. There's a few things that aren't 100% clear or are a little bit confusing. So I wish the rulebook just had a little bit more information, but it's pretty easy to understand for the most part. So I feel like even for new hobby gamers, it's shouldn't be too terribly difficult to understand how to get this one going. And then as you play, the game just sort of, it progresses in a very sort of natural way. It's one of those games where it feels like what you're doing makes sense. Okay, this happens next, and that makes sense. So I think that it's highly, highly approachable for new players or players who like maybe a little bit lighter experiences. Not that it is a light game, it's just also it's not a terribly heavy game either.
It ramps up.
Yeah.
So, like you can have an easy game, or you can kind of ramp it up to oh my gosh, what have I done?
One of the things that I really, really like about the game is how replayable it feels. Everybody gets we play with 4 of these roles here, and there's a bunch of different ones in the box. And then in addition to that, we also play with different win condition cards each game as well. So if I recall correctly, there's like 3 of the introductory ones, 3 of the midweight ones, and then 3 of the heavyweight ones. So you can kind of tailor your experience to if you want, something lighter or something heavier, something a little bit more challenging or not. And then in addition to the cards, the win condition cards, having like a weighted system to them as well, you also have the ability to adjust how challenging you make the game by this spill out track. If you want a standard game, then your spill outs will get worse over the course of the game, but not too bad. Or you could offer yourself a challenge or even go to the ultimate mode, and the spillouts will get increasingly more and more challenging to deal with. So I like the way that they've built in optional difficulty differences for each game. It's, again, super approachable, very easy to say, like, okay, today I want to play an easier game. Here's how we're going to make that happen. Or today I want a more difficult game. Here's how we're going to make that happen. I'm not sure how much harder it gets because I have only played the standard level of spillouts and the easy and mid-range win condition cards. And the second tier win condition card did feel noticeably more challenging than the first tier. So I think that it does definitely, the difficulty does increase just a little bit in between those, and that's I think it's a good amount.
Agreed.
The only thing, there's a couple things that I'm not just in love with about this game. One is this thing right here, like this monstrosity. I was trying to figure out how to do this differently. This is a plastic dice tower, essentially, for a lack of a better term. It's a plastic dice tower that rests on top of this thing here, and you drop the dice into this, and then this cardboard bit here actually pushes them out into the sectors, which then you can use to put the die where they need to go. And it works just fine, but this is loud, and when the dice fall into this, it's not always easy to see that they're in there. And in fact, over the course of a few games, I have learned that, like, if you're not careful, you can sort of like lose track of dice in here. If it's like on the edge and you can't see that, and no one else notices it because this is sitting there, then like you might find it later and be like, oh, this one was in there too. Whoops.
Whoopsie.
And then on top of that, this sort of blocks players' views across the table. So like I can't really see what's going on over here unless I'm like, doing this kind of thing, or if you move this. So I'm not in love with this system. I think that it does what it's supposed to do well enough. And I actually tried in one game, to just like set this off to the side of the table, like mirroring, like, okay, this is the way it would go. So this quadrant is still this quadrant, and this quadrant is still this quadrant. And that helped a little bit because then I could see like across the table, I could see everything without like any kind of,
no obstructions.
Right, no obstructions. But it didn't solve the problem of like I can't quite see inside of each of these. And maybe I'm just not like tall enough to be able to see inside, but that did feel just a tiny bit problematic in the game. I don't really know how you would address that differently though. And then the only other thing about it that I didn't really like was, honestly, I don't really like the theme. It's a great implemented theme. Like it's highly, highly well implemented. It feels like you're really cleaning the oil out of the ocean in as much as a board game can. It feels like you're trying to rescue these animals, and you're trying to push back the oil that has spilled out and that kind of stuff. All of the roles are like, it makes you feel like this person would be working in this environment to try to, get this situation under control. And so it feels really like the theme is a good match for the mechanics, and the theme is very well implemented, but I just don't like thinking about what humans have done to the planet and the animals and the earth that depend on us to be good stewards. And when we're not, then like it really is detrimental to the planet and to creatures which depend on us to do better than we do. so I don't like thinking about that. That makes me sad. And this game is very thematic, so I think about that when I'm playing this game. And a friend of mine, I played this with a friend of mine, and she pointed out, like, but we're saving the animals. And I get that, but like the animals are still in peril because of humans. And I don't like that. But that's a personal thing. I do like the fact that we are trying to help the animals. I just don't like the fact that they're only in peril because we put them there. But that's a massive downer. Sorry. But I do think the game is a really decent cooperative game, and I like a lot of what they've done to facilitate the game being streamlined, easy to approach, easy to play. I really like that having the win condition cards. Having win condition cards means that you could have any one of, I think it's 9 different win conditions, right? And that's just like what's in the box. So there's 9 different win scenarios included in the box, and then they could come out, and I'm not sure if they will, but they could come out with even more, and it would be super easy to change the win conditions because you just pick a different card.
Or even a fan.
Even like fan-made ones or things like that. And I think that makes sense for this game. I think that like people could easily come up with their own win conditions if they want. So I love that implementation of like, hey, these are the win conditions for this specific game. I think it's really clean. I think that it adds like a ton of replayability to the game, and even like potential future replayability if they do add additional cards. So I love the win condition cards. The production of everything is really good, except, like I said, I don't really love this thing here. But yeah, I think for the most part, it's fun, it's thematic, it's interesting. There's interesting choices to make. One thing that I think was kind of cool, it's a sort of a small thing, but there's these, we talked about it a little bit. There's these 3 weather dice in the bag, and you draw from the bag blindly, so you don't know exactly what you're drawing. You put your hand in. If you draw out a weather die with your oil dice, then you drop that into the tower as well, and the oil just go out to their sectors as they're supposed to, but the weather die dictates some condition, and based on the roll, you have to work under that weather condition sort of for like the next round of play. So each character has 1 turn under those weather conditions. And they do different things depending on which result you get on the die. But I thought that was, again, a nice thematic way to introduce some variation on what's happening. You can kind of get into a flow state in this game where you're like, okay, this is what needs to happen next, and this is what needs to happen next. And there's things that interrupt your plans, like the oil, maybe it's spilling out over here, and you really need to deal with that or whatever. So that forces you to pause your plan a little bit to like deal with this or whatever. But the weather die felt like a refreshing, even though it's almost always negative. I feel like it was like a refreshing sort of like, okay, hey, this weather comes in and we have to deal with this in addition to like the other stuff that was already sort of on our radar. So I thought that the weather dice was a nice like way to sort of break up that flow state that I felt like we got into in the game. So yeah, that's some of my sort of random jumbled thoughts on the spill. What do you think, Nick?
Quickly, well, I do agree with most of all that you said, if not all of it. I didn't quite like this, but I don't have any better solutions. And the only reason I got frustrated with it sometimes, because yes, there was sometimes where dice were like in corners, in the nooks of the corners, and we missed them, and it was frustrating because it's like, well, I don't want to. I want to win where I can say I won, not that there's an asterisk. There's an asterisk on it because I didn't see a die. But other than that, I was very impressed how balanced this game is. It just, as I was playing it, it feels like there were so many moving parts within this game that I was kind of like, this is just the design team did a great job on balancing everything that's going on within the spill, to the characters, to how the dice come out, how the animals, you're dealing basically all the animals are placed out and that's all these sets. There's 6 sets of animals to rescue, and the tie-ins from the ability cards that you can have over the game through the win condition card. I mean, it all just ties in very well mechanically and thematically. Yeah, it's pretty good. That also ties in. It's kind of sad to think about what's happening to the animals. You don't want to just revisit that downer, but I mean, that is what it is.
Sorry, guys.
It's okay. But yeah, I think if you like cooperative games, or if you want to get into a cooperative game, this is one that I would recommend. It's really, you can really like dip your toe into this cooperative game and get the feel for it. Yeah, and I think it's so weird because it feels a lot like the Flashpoint Fire Rescue, but 2 different companies.
I really do. I love Flashpoint Fire Rescue. I'm not a huge fan of cooperative games as a whole, but I do really love Flashpoint Fire Rescue. But I have to say that I feel like the Spill is more approachable than Flashpoint Fire Rescue.
I would definitely say that. This is way more approachable. And with any cooperative game, you have to basically know who you're playing with. There's always that chance of the alpha player taking over and taking charge, but you just that's kind of like a game group thing, or people that you play with, because as always, you should let the person whoever's the active player take their turn and make their decisions, even if you don't think that's the most optimal way.
I don't really know why, but in this game, I didn't feel, and I've played it a handful of times now, but only with people that I'm already fairly close to. I played it with one of my best friends, and then I played it with Nick. We've played a few times, and I thought, like, maybe it's just because we don't have a problem with alpha gaming in these situations. Like with these people, I don't have a problem with an alpha gamer. But I didn't feel like there was a problem with anybody alpha gaming in this game.
Yeah.
Now, there's nothing built into the mechanics really that mitigate alpha gaming, I don't think. But it didn't feel like it was a problem anyway. And I don't know if that was some beautiful element to the design that they somehow managed to design this game where players didn't encounter alpha gaming, or if it just wasn't.
Pandemic, that game, you could definitely, that's where probably the alpha gamer thing creeped up at and came, because you felt like there were so many decisions that rippled through the entire game that people were like, well, if this happens and this happens, this happens. In the Spill, it seems like, yeah, you can get lost in what's going to happen throughout the game, but also there's enough immediate problems to resolve that I think everyone would be like, yeah, do that, go do that, because it makes sense, instead of some other games that have longer lasting, we've got to build up to this because we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and that might be it. But like I said, for whatever reason, I don't know if it was some beautiful design element that I'm just not aware of, or if maybe I'm just not playing with that type of player, or maybe it's a little bit of both. I don't know. But it didn't feel like there was. It just didn't feel like it came up that there was situations where people would alpha game, So if that is a design,
some mastery design.
Yeah, nice job on that. But I personally felt like it was easy for each person to play their turn, and people could discuss oh, hey, maybe if you dealt with this, then we'd get an orange cube and we could charge up this card over here, or things like that. So there was room for that discussion. It just didn't feel like this game promoted any sort of alpha gaming or anything like that. I don't know that it really did anything to actively discourage it either, but for some reason this just felt like a slightly more peaceful cooperative experience than some of the other games Pandemic can tend to feel. And that was nice.
Yeah. Or Dead of Winter. Dead of Winter, my gosh. You're the traitor? Nah.
I like cooperative games well enough. They're not my favorite thing, but I like them well enough. And I can see the attraction for adding a hidden role or secret objectives or that kind of thing. But personally, for this experience, especially with this theme, I thought it was really nice that it was just a fully cooperative experience. There's no, there's no like politician role that's like trying to play two sides of the fence or anything like that. It was just like a full on, we work together. You do what you're best at doing and I'll do what I'm best at doing. And hopefully we work together to, contain the situation. So
agreed. All right. Well, was The Spill by Smirk and Dagger and Smirk and Laughter. We hope you all enjoyed our vlog on this game, and we hope you check it out for yourself. And we'll have links in the description of this video so you can get more information on it. All right. Well, we'll see you guys next time. Toodles!